Do you know how hard it is to find a job in this industry and to find talent? It's not easy because places like LinkedIn and Indeed, they're just too general. No one's ever had an industry vertical job board like we have for the investment management industry. Across all job titles, that is Dakota Talent. Of course, we're focused on sales, marketing, distribution, but if you want a job as an analyst at a private credit firm, private equity, you can post a job here. If you want an internship, if you want a job first year out of college, you can all post here. You can even create premier listings within Dakota Talent. So we just wanted to welcome you. As you probably know, if this is your first time to Dakota, we're a fundraising organization. We've been raising money since 2006. We've raised over $25 billion. We know the industry. We've also created an industry-leading database of over 1,000 firms and 4,000 fundraisers that use our data to do cold outreach. So we've created this really wonderful community, and we're bringing the community together to be matchmakers, to bring job seekers, opportunities, as well as employers who want talent. So please use the job board. It's really fantastic. It's easy to use. It's very easy to post a job, post a premier listing, and also to create a profile for yourself and post a resume. So have fun, enjoy Dakota Talent. What is up, everybody? Gui Costin, founder, CEO of Dakota, and I wanted to talk to you about a new Rainmaker podcast, and it's going to be interviewing heads of sales, heads of distribution, asking them all sorts of questions around how they run their sales organization, really digging into their sales processes, how they've set it up, philosophically, how they've literally built the business. So you can hear, as a salesperson, our audience can hear how the best people in the business are running their sales organization. So if you have an interest in being interviewed, or if you want to recommend someone at your company to be on the show, simply email me at guy@dakotalive.com. And if you just want to register on our website where you can sign up to get alerts when we release the newest episodes, simply go to dakota.com and we'll send you emails every time we release a new interview. What is up, everybody? It's Gui Costin, founder, CEO of Dakota. Welcome to our latest edition of Rainmaker Live. I'm joined by my long-term colleague, Tim Dolan. Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
So as you all know, we do this show once a month, and we really run through, Tim, as right now I'm concluding the Rainmaker book. So we're calling it the Dakota Way, but it's the Rainmaker Sales System. For those of you that don't know us, we've been a third-party marketer since 2006. We have a very distinct way of working and thinking about sales and raising capital. We've raised over $25 billion of a 10-person sales team. You may or may not know, but in 2019, we took that database that we raised $25 billion for using. We commercialized it. So essentially have created a fully populated and up-to-date CRM of LPs, both in the US, Canada, and globally. We have over 1,100 investment firms subscribed, as well as 4,500 fundraisers. We use the database every single day. And so we believe so much in data and data accuracy of how much it can benefit. We actually created a business around it so we could have the best data possible to fundraise. So Tim, any opening remarks that you wanted to tell the audience just about what we're going to go through today?
No, I think one of the takeaways that I always enjoy from this call is a few key things like focusing on what matters most, managing expectations. But what I enjoy, right, is just distilling down an investment process, right? This is the sales process for a fundraiser, and this is what we use every single day to exercise against and ultimately try and raise capital.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about one thing now. You and I were talking the way in the car. You just landed from the airport this morning. Let's talk about money in motion.
Yep.
Okay, so we have 4 long-only strategies we market, and generally 1 private credit strategy. And I was saying to Tim, I'm like, I really like it. Almost every day, every week, we're hearing the nickels and dimes, the 2, 3, 5, 10s of millions of dollars we're winning. Doesn't matter if it's large cap growth, mid cap growth, large value, private credit, international growth. You sort of corrected me and said, yeah, but, right, we won the big mandate, $250 million for Hamlin, right, equity income. We're looking at a big opportunity for Spruce, private credit. And you were just telling me, so I guess my point is a lot of people listening right now, we're like, man, there's not a lot of money in motion. Is anything really happening? Why don't you just speak to that? And so a little bit of a pep talk, but just anecdotally, I want you all to know money is in motion, things are happening.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely money in motion. Things are happening again, but that goes with a process that we put into place, and that is what we're about to go through on this call. But the stick-to-itiveness, the calling on people that buy what you sell, right? It will come, right? And getting on the road and doing the meetings, doing the Zoom meetings, the continuous follow-up, right? Ultimately, decisions will be made, and allocators are making decisions every single day. It's our job as salespeople to make sure that we're at least a part of that search, right? So fortunately, we've been on the positive end of a few of these larger wins, and we've got a few more in the pipeline, but you could still build a great business, as we talked about, it kind of the nickels and the dimes, the onesie twosies here and there. They continue to compound over time, and you've got a great fund and strategy.
Yeah, and Tim, so the point being is money's in motion if you're doing the sales calls.
Yes.
That's really the key. I know it sounds obvious, but the more sales calls you do against qualified buyers, as we're going to talk about, I mean, it's hard work, it's pedestrian type work because you have to set up a lot of meetings. If you've been successful in this business, that means you're a great storyteller and you know how to take a complex story and make it simple. A lot of people aren't thrilled about being a professional meeting setter. We'll talk about that. But money is in motion if you're making the sales calls, telling a great story, following up, et cetera. Okay. Tim, let's get into the umbrella concept of Rainmaker. So we know money's in motion, but let's just touch on, I'd say it's a somewhat controversial topic, Tim, and that's cold outreach. Now, we are unbelievable believers in cold outreach for both of our businesses. If you're on this call and you've been contacted by our business development reps on the software side to sell the database, you know we like cold outreach. From an investment sales perspective, we love cold outreach. We love finding the new constantly. So it's controversial because people want the warm introduction. Well, we all want the warm intro, right? But you're going to wait 6, 9, 12, 18 months for the warm intro versus just reaching out to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to be in Boston on May 18th. Can you meet at 3 o'clock? I think talk to me about cold outreach because it really is controversial and not everyone believes in it.
Yeah. We're huge fans, to Gui's point. Obviously, we're doing it every single day, but ultimately, right, I started here 12 years ago. I didn't know anyone, right? So I had to do it. That makes sense, right? That's just fundamentally, you need to do cold outreach. But every single day, connecting with somebody who didn't know you the day prior, and you're showing them a good idea, a good investment strategy, in some instances, they actually thank you for reaching out.
They do.
They do. And they're like, thank you. Like,
they're looking for ideas.
This is a great strategy. And the other output of cold outreach is you build that relationship. They thank you for the ideas. They keep taking your call and meeting. And we see this every single day with M&A activity, especially in the RIA space and the wirehouse teams leaving. If they know you and they like you and they get bought by a bigger firm, they then take you to this larger firm. So again, kind of getting nuanced, we don't judge by size of an allocator, right? We want to get to know all of them that buy what we sell and just form that relationship because you never know what's going to happen.
Great. So cold outreach, we're big believers in it. It underlies everything we do in this training session as we go through. And so, Tim, we're going to kick it off. So our Rainmaker training and what we're going to talk about, it's relatively simple. Think of it as a circle. The umbrella concept on top of the circle underlies everything that we do, and that is focus on what matters most. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's always one or two things in any endeavor, anything that you're going to get into, any project that number one and number two, if you just focus on that, you're going to be fine. That's what we've done. So at the end of the day, you're going to see as we go through this, creating a sales plan so setting expectations with your boss, right? That is absolutely what matters most because you have to be in clear alignment, and we're going to get into it with clear reporting against your plan. 2, you have to identify your TAM so you're calling on the right people. That is most important. You got to be calling on the right people to buy what you sell, the qualified buyers. 3, you got to be a master messenger. So what matters most is if you get that meeting, you have to be prepared to be able to deliver the message that's going to not only resonate, but can be retold, which is critical. And then you have to ask the 2 tough questions to close out the meeting. That matters most. And then 4th, you have to be able to create a killer follow-up system using a CRM to just get a few things in that CRM, meeting scheduled and meeting notes, so you can look back on past activity to trigger sales actions.
Yeah, exactly. So do we want to get into the first pillar?
Let's get into it. Yeah, if we're talking. So Tim, let's just talk about how important it is about setting expectations and creating a sales plan with our partners, because you might want to reference the calls that we do weekly with each one of our partners, and it's on the calendar. We never miss.
they're completely in the loop.
Yeah.
Just talk about how important that is.
So any mandate that we have on as third-party marketers on the fundraising side is to start, right? We create a business plan and a sales plan. And what that effectively is as fundraisers is we go to the investment team, the portfolio managers, the owner of those businesses and say, this is where we're going to focus our time. Here are some tailwinds, here are some headwinds, but expectations of what we can do from a fundraising standpoint. And you print out this document, you go through it, and most importantly, and we always touch on this, is you have to have buy-in from your colleagues and your peers, especially the portfolio managers, right? Because their expectations of how much they should raise is most often not in line with what will actually come in. So getting that buy-in and that sales plan and creating that process, right? That is the most important thing day one. And then it's reporting against the sales plan. Right. So we use Salesforce as our CRM. We're tracking past activity and pipeline reports. We'll get into this in the fourth pillar, but creating those activity reports and pipeline reports and reviewing them weekly with your team internally, that's part of the sales plan as well. Because then they're never guessing, oh, what's Tim doing? What's Gui doing? What's Andrew doing? Right? I haven't heard from the Dakota folks. I haven't heard from our sales team. Right. We're always in front of them with who we're talking to, the meetings we have on the calendar, past activity, and the pipeline and feedback.
So the goal at the end of the day is not technically to create a sales plan to create a sales plan. That sounds obvious. What it is, it's to keep you honest. Okay? And if you're a small firm and you're listening to this and you're a one-man band, a one-woman band, what have you, it's to keep you honest and disciplined against what you're agreeing to with the CEO, CIO, PM. Okay? It's writing out the plan. It's some of the channels you're going to focus on. And then what does success look like? Is it raising money? Is it covering accounts? We prefer to cover accounts and get feedback and share that feedback. Mm-hmm. And then you want to be able to do asset class studies. So if you can create a situation where you can study what other funds of similar size have done, similar makeup, similar team and everything. So then you don't get someone saying, hey, we should be able to raise $1 billion for this fund. And you say, well, if you look at the funds that have been out there, 200 million is kind of the top line.
Yeah.
So you get the plan rooted in reality. And then you have a specific date and time each week that you're going to report progress back against the plan. So principle number one is setting proper expectations with your boss. Principle number two is we call it know who to call on, which has 3 components to it. One, you have to establish your TAM, which is simply who are my qualified buyers, who buys what I sell so I can get in front of them. 2, what's going to be my process for getting in front of them, city scheduling. Mm-hmm. And then 3, in order to be an effective city scheduler, what email am I going to send? Let's get back to knowing who to call on.
Yeah.
So talk about how we establish the TAM for each one of the managers that we work with.
Yeah, so it really comes down to the investment strategy and vehicle availability. That really is defines your TAM, right? For the most part, and we're overgeneralizing here, but for the most part, if you're a long only mutual fund, separate account, ETF, right? That's the RIA, family office, intermediary channel, the banks and the BDs. The separate accounts, you could go to some institutions as well. So that is your TAM.
So you have to find, what Tim's getting at is you have to find your best fit channel based upon your product structure, the investment strategy, because product structure drives channel focus. And also fund 1, fund 2, fund 3, that's all going to determine it. And what you want to be able to do is focus on your most high valued prospects. Basically the people that you know buy exactly what you make in size, right? And that's the whole goal. So second thing, Tim, from an execution standpoint, and by the way, this is getting back, we're now going to enter what I believe is the hardest concept here, and that's city scheduling, which means let's talk about having 5 cities on the calendar at any given time.
So this city scheduling and having 5 cities on this calendar at any given time gives salespeople purpose when they wake up every single morning, right? Because you've built out your TAM, and let's say you're only focused on RIAs. I mean, that's 4,000 accounts at a minimum that you could be calling on. That's a huge list on a Tuesday, right? But distilling it down, if you have 5 cities, Chicago, Dallas, LA, Denver, and Miami, right? Big metros. All right, I'm going to focus on Chicago for October 15th, and I'm going to go through the RAs. That gives you purpose to focus on your TAM in one metro area that's digestible, and you can do that in a day, right? And then the city scheduling, and we'll get into the email that you'll use, right, is I'm going to be in town, can you meet, right? Simplifying it. That gives you purpose. It gives you a call to action. It gives you a reason why you're reaching out rather than just saying, hey, we have the strategy, we'd love to introduce ourselves, right? There's no call to action there. There's no purpose there. So the city scheduling gives purpose to a salesperson. One tiny little sidebar here is we know some firms are newer, smaller, leaner, can't be doing as much travel as some bigger firms. We're not necessarily saying you have to go travel to raise money, right? This is an account.
But let's be fair. If you do want to raise money, most of you on this call are located in areas where there's massive, massive TAMs.
Yes.
Philly, New York, Boston, all drivable.
Yes.
Okay, Mid-Atlantic region, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be flying cross country and spending a ton of money on T&E. You can use your car if budget is an issue, which we know it can be.
Yeah.
But getting face-to-face, it's fine to do Zoom.
Yeah.
It's a game changer when you get face-to-face versus Zoom.
Yeah.
But if that's all you have is Zoom, then convert to a Zoom.
Exactly. But at a certain point, if you get 4 meetings, we would recommend going, and we always say, see the white of their eyes, right? And build that relationship in person. Absolutely. But this is a organizational tool. It's an account coverage tool as well as for city scheduling.
So always having 5 cities on the books at any given time, giving a reason, a clear call to action. So let's talk about the email. Mm-hmm. So I'll run through the email. It's very important that the subject line says meeting request, date and time. Then the body of the email needs to be 1 to 2 sentences max. You need to pack the punch of everything that makes your company unique and different so they can communicate why they would want to take the meeting, and then give a clear call to action. Can you meet May 18th at 3 p.m. In Boston? Okay, so that's knowing who to call, and that's your TAM. So once you book out a day of meetings, the key is when you're in the meeting, Tim, what are you saying? Principle number 3 is you have to be a master messenger. And we believe, okay, this is ours. You can bring in, we're going to give you the rocks and the stones. You can pour the sand into the jar, if you will, and give your own personal approach to this. We're going to give you what we believe the 3 components of a meeting are. And this needs to be practiced, prepared, right, and then executed, okay? And to kick it off, we always talk about the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right, you have to study, and Tim, why don't you get in this, but you have to study and know ahead of time what someone wants to hear. And what's the goal in that first 2 minutes?
You have to center the conversation, and we always say punch them in the face.
What am I listening?
Yeah.
Like, what am I listening to? What am I listening to? That's what you have to answer. What am I listening to? Is this a private equity fund? Is this lower middle market buyout? Is it concentrated large cap growth? Like, be very clear about all the characteristics in the first 2 minutes that make them want to say, okay, now I know exactly how I should be listening to this. And for the most part, over time, you have to become extremely skilled at telling the potential investor exactly what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So centering the conversation. We work for Edgewood Management. They've been around since 1974, 100% employee owned, solely focused on concentrated large cap growth. They manage $38 billion across 22 stocks. Large cap growth, employee owned, we know where they're based, right? So now the analyst is like, great, got it. What's the vehicle availability? And
take that off the table. It sounds logical, but I'm just telling you, if you can get that off the table, point number 2 is then you got to get into Q&A.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. And we always talk about conversation, Q&A, not monologue. Okay, if you're with a PM, the goal has to be short answer first. Yourself, same thing. Just talk about how important it is to have a conversation with someone versus a monologue.
Massively important. And again, right, you're across from someone and they've had a busy day. They've probably done 5 to 10 meetings internally, externally, right? This is a lot that's being thrown at them. They need bite-sized chunks of information. I was with 2 close relationships of mine yesterday in Milwaukee, and the feedback I got from them was quicker, easier to understand, and don't tell me what I can read a fact sheet, right? Give me some information that's a layer deeper than the fact sheet.
Tell the story.
Yeah, tell the story.
People remember stories. They don't remember facts. People remember stories. What is your story? That's what you have to define in this conversation. What is your story? For instance, Edgewood's story, when I first met Alan Breed, the president, in 2006, I said, Alan, could you walk me through your investment philosophy and process? He goes, Guy, I'll make it really simple for you. So what's that? He goes, if you could pick one company in the S&P 500 that you'd like to be your family business, which one would it be? Right, so if you unpack that, let's just pick Visa, right? Well, I want to pick something, a duopoly, growing 20% a year, generates a ridiculous amount of cash, has little or no debt, has an incredible management team, and has unbelievable growth prospects. And he goes, Gui, we want to own 22 of those. Okay, so it's like, wow, okay, super high quality company, generating tons of cash, little or no debt. The point is, I mean, that's a story you can retell right now. And so come up with a story. So Tim, one question we get all the time as these meetings end, and they say, what is your follow-up process? And what do we say?
It happens in the meeting.
Happens in the meeting. Hardest thing you're going to do. I'm sorry, but I know. Oh, no, I'll do that. You end the meeting and say, Tim, I really enjoyed our time together. I think you really got to know Edwin and the large cap growth strategy. Yep, yeah, I did. Hey, just out of curiosity, would you see our strategy fitting within your asset allocation mix? If they say no, you know what the follow-up is. Mailing list. If they say yes, you simply say, hey, Tim, do you anticipate doing a search in the next 12 months? If they say no, you know what the follow-up is. If they say yes, then you say, okay, what do we need to do to better familiarize you with our strategy? Then when you go back to the office and everyone says, hey, how was the meeting? You don't say great meeting. I can't tell you how many times people are like, so how was the meeting? It was awesome. We connected, we bonded. I mean, it was almost like, we had lifelong friends, this whole thing. Well, what did they say anything about the strategy? No. I'm going to do that after. That's how you get ghosted. No one wants to give you bad news. Ask the two tough questions. If you market a private fund, simply say, first, do you see this fitting within your asset allocation mix? If they say yes, say that's great. We have a final close on 3/31/2025. Is that something that you think you'd be able to make or not? Because sometimes board meetings and things can't happen that fast. If they say yes, you know what the follow-up is. If they say no, you know what the follow-up is. You have to walk out of there knowing current status and next step. You got to walk out knowing current status and next step, and you can do it very politely. So ask the two tough questions. So first 2 minutes, center the conversation so they know what they should be listening for. 2, get into a conversation. 3, ask the two tough questions to close the meeting. So principle number 4, to close out, Tim. This is very simple, but I believe it's one of the few leverage points that a salesperson has to 10x their productivity. To kick it off, okay, it's a CRM. We happen to use Salesforce. There's a lot of other great CRMs out there. You simply have to do 2 things. Tim, you want to talk about the 2 things you have to do?
Get your activity in there.
Meeting scheduled.
Meeting scheduled, so you can run past activity reports and future activity reports. And the reason why that is important, as we all know, time flies, right? I was in Milwaukee yesterday. In 6 months, I'm going to look back at my activity and be like, wow, it just felt like I was there, right? I need to make sure I'm always looking at my past activity because there's always follow-up to be had from that day of meeting. Not only the people I met with, but the people I didn't meet with as well. So tracking all of that activity as well.
Yeah. So the key about a CRM, how you 10x your productivity is every single time you schedule a meeting, that goes into the CRM. When you complete the meeting, you simply put in your call notes. Then what you're able to do is you can run your past activity report. And that's going to trigger sales actions because you're going to go down and look and say, wow, with one click, I can see everyone I've met with. I need to meet with this person. Okay, need to follow up there. Okay, good. Man, I can't believe it's been 120 days or 6 months and the whole thing. And that's what happens if you set up a ton of meetings.
Yep.
Then the second key thing from a reporting standpoint that you can do quite rapidly is create pipeline reports. And you can create pipeline reports by type. So it could be a consultant pipeline report. It could be an RA report. It could be a general pipeline report. Those are the reports you share with your boss during your weekly updates. So instead of having to scramble around and spend a ton of time creating pipeline reports, It's simply there if you're creating the opportunities and entering the information. A huge time saver. And then those opportunity reports, those pipeline reports, you're able to review, which will also trigger sales actions because you can sort it and group it by stage. So if you do that, at the top is going to be the closed one. You're trying to move everything up to the top. And then it's going to force you to look at your pipeline and say, oh, you know what? I really need to call Tim Dolan, follow up on that because these are the next steps. So lastly, you do need 2 fields. You need 2 key fields that are text boxes as part of the opportunity pipeline report, which are?
The current status and the next steps.
Right. And they can't be.
No white space, no blanks.
No blanks. Information has to be in there. So you fill out the information, current status, next step, when you're reviewing that with your boss, and it helps you manage the 10 times the amount of information any one salesperson could manage. So
having that next step in the pipeline, and if it is blank, actually goes back to asking the 2 tough questions, right? If you force yourself, hey, I need to know to report back to my team the next step, I'm going to figure it out in the meeting, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way to think about it as well, just to get over kind of that It might be awkward at the beginning to ask those tough questions, but we need to know.
100%. So let's just recap. So our umbrella concept is focus what matters most. Those are all included in the 4 principles. So principle number 1 is set expectations, which is creating a sales plan to create alignment with your boss. 2 is to define your TAM, know who to call on, defining your TAM, defining your strategy for your cold outreach and the email that you're going to send, because it's going to be generally cold email. 3rd is be a master messenger. So make sure you're practicing and you're set up to do your opening remarks, get into Q&A and ask the 2 tough questions to close out the meeting. And then 4th, the 4th core principle is leverage a CRM so you can 10x your productivity, because you're able to enter the meetings you've scheduled, the call notes, create past activity reports, and then create your pipeline reports to report to your boss and also use to create sales triggers and sales actions. So, Tim, thanks for another great edition.
Thank you.
The Rainmaker Live. I appreciate any concluding remarks.
No, I can't stress enough the feedback I got from 2 friends yesterday, allocators, being the master messenger. As one of them said, he goes, look, I'm a highly analytical person. I can tell who prepared for a meeting and who didn't, right? So being prepared, studying your strategy, getting deeper than just the fact sheet that they can read on their own, if they can notice a difference between the people that prepare and those that don't.
Yeah, so tell the story.
Yeah.
Tim, that's awesome insight from the field. We appreciate it. All right, everybody, thanks so much. That's another wrap of Rainmaker Live. Can't wait to see you on the next episode of Rainmaker Live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Rainmaker Live. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. As you know, we have a whole program that's dedicated to training both salespeople and sales leaders, okay? How to lead teams and how to follow the principles that we have followed to raise over $25 billion. If you have an interest in bringing me in to meet with your team and go through the Rainmaker curriculum, I would love to do it. Simply email me at gui@dakota.com.